CO2 gases in industrial installations. Agriculture and forest are other sectors where, although it's slightly different from the previous, a lot can be achieved by managing the soils to retain the carbon, to restore degraded lands, to improve rice cultivation that helps to minimize the emissions of methane and other things. And in the forest sector, the main thing is the reduced deforestation, which is a major contributor to current emissions, and if that can be reduced, we can achieve major gains. And in the waste sector, there are many practices like landfill methane recovery, waste incineration, composting, recycling, and waste minimization that do contribute to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Next, please. But we should not forget about the non-technical issues. That's another message from the report. There are quite a number of lifestyle and behavioral changes that can contribute to climate change mitigation. That is something the report has not been able to quantify, so it's a more qualitative message, but that's clearly coming from the sector analysis. Next. Now, the next question, of course, is what does that cost for the economy as a whole? If we undertake all these efforts, what will we suffer? Will the economy suffer? And there is a broad analysis of what it would mean for the economy, but again, for different levels of ambition. And that is expressed here in stabilization level. I will not bother you with the details, but the highest one is the least ambitious policy, and the lowest level is the most ambitious that has been analyzed. And in 2030, because these numbers are for the next 25 years, that means that we're talking about a reduction of the GDP, of the national income, if you would like to use that word, compared to what it otherwise would have been in the most ambitious case of 3%. And that's against the background of a rising income level over the 25 years. We've also expressed that in how does it affect the annual average growth rate, because many people are used to that metric, used to that way of expressing economic growth. So if you have an economic growth of 3, 4, 5% per year, this means that if you do undertake the most ambitious measures, you talk about a reduction of that 3, 4, 5 with 0.12 percentage point. So to put things in perspective. Now these are analyses from models, so you have to be cautious. These are making assumptions about a very efficient approach to this, and if that is not done, costs could, of course, be higher. Next. There are other benefits, which we normally in this report call co-benefits of mitigation. And one very good example is that health benefits from reduced air pollution as a result of reduced GHG reduction can offset a substantial fraction of the cost. And an example is that if you shift from coal to gas, for instance, you could achieve a lower level of air pollution. That lower air pollution gives fewer health effects, and that is a significant, if you quantify that in monetary terms, is a substantial gain you get. And so it is important to look at the climate change mitigation in the broader context. And there are other benefits, such as improved energy security, by making yourself less vulnerable to supply of energy sources from abroad. balance of trade improvement and employment, and also provision of energy services to rural areas. There is also something we have to be careful about. As long as the mitigation action is only taking place in a few countries, then developments elsewhere could in fact reduce some of the effects, and we call that so-called carbon leakage. So there are connections between actions of different countries. Next. Another part of the report is devoted to the long term. This is a problem that will not be playing out only over the next 25 years. It's a long-term problem, and controlling this will take 50 to 100 years. But that means that since gases that go up in the atmosphere will not will stay there, that we have to make sure that emissions are going down. It's like your bathtub. If you have the faucet open, then the bath will overflow at some point. So in order to prevent that, you have to close the tap. That is the idea of stabilization. It means that, and the analysis in this report says that the lower you want to keep the level of gases in the atmosphere, the earlier you have to reduce emissions. And we go one step further to say that in the next 2 or 3 decades, the reductions through mitigation action will have a large impact on what we in the longer term can achieve. So there is a clear connection to what we can achieve in the long term and what we do in the next 25 years. Next. There's a lot of analysis of what that means in terms of when these emissions have to go down. I won't go into too much detail for you, but if you look at the so-called A1 category, that is the category that is the most stringent action that keeps the level of gases in the atmosphere at the lowest of all of the studies analyzed. That means that for that scenario to be realized, global emissions need to peak not later than 2015. And by 2050, they need to be somewhere between 50 to 80% below current levels. So that means there is an enormous effort would be required to achieve that. Of course, if the levels you allow in the atmosphere are getting higher and you go down in the table, the time you have to turn around the growing emissions into a decline will be longer, and the reduction required by 2050 will be less. Next. What we also did in the report is connect those levels of gases in the atmosphere, the so-called concentration levels, into what it means for the global mean temperature in the very long term, when the atmosphere and the Earth system has stabilized. And we show, and that's based to a large extent on the Working Group 1 report that was already approved and released in January, that the higher the concentrations become, the higher the global mean average temperature will be. So we present a clear relationship for people to understand what these levels of greenhouse gases could mean for temperatures, and connect that also with the impacts of these changed climates on various sectors. Yes, next. Then I'll turn it over to Ogunlade Davidson for this part.
Thank you, Bart. Bart has given us both technical and non-technical measures to try to reduce greenhouse gases. But what the report further tried